Hello, this is Joe. Welcome back to the channel.
Well, good day everybody and welcome back. So I have the blue IBM Selectric 721 and I've been using it a lot lately, been writing letters with it, and I had done something rather strange. You might think it's a bad idea. I want to talk about it. Yeah, I decided that I didn't want 12 pitch type. I wanted 10 pitch, 10 characters per inch instead of 12. So I swapped the chassis with another typewriter. Hey, let's talk about it. Stay tuned. So this is a 721 Selectric. It's the 70 series, which is the first line of Selectrics, the early Selectrics. The 1 refers to the width of the platen. It's the narrower platen, the 11-inch platen. And then the middle digit tells you the kind of ribbon system it has. This, being a 2, is the cartridge system that is loaded typically with cloth typewriter ribbon. And the mechanism has an auto-reverse mechanism so that the ribbon can be reused over and over again. And it has a bichrome capability. Some of these ribbons weren't cloth. They were multi-strike film ribbons. I have a couple of those Burroughs type cartridges, but mostly they were cloth ribbons. Okay, so this is a 12 pitch machine. I've enjoyed using it for writing letters and whatnot, but one thing I've noticed is with the cloth ribbon and 12 pitch type on the type elements, the letters are a little bit less than as crisp and sharply defined as I'd like. That has kind of bugged me. And also, I have a selection of both 10 pitch and 12 pitch type elements, and I really can't, practically speaking, use the 10 pitch elements on a 12 pitch machine because the letters are kind of crushed together a little bit too closely to be readable. So I was thinking it would be nice to have this same blue typewriter in a 10 pitch chassis. Well, the opportunity came up last week. I was over at my friend Kevin's, and he has Gandalf the Grey, a 10 pitch Selectric 721 that he got from Ted Monk. And we were talking, and Kevin, in his generosity, decided to let me take Gandalf Grey and use the 10-pitch chassis in the blue typewriter here. Well, there's one other complication in this idea of swapping chassis, which is the 12-pitch chassis, originally in the blue typewriter, had been fully serviced by local IBM technician Steve Marshall, and he updated the chassis with a 1.5 line spacing feature and with the express backspace feature. Whereas the 10-pitch chassis from Gandalf the Grey has the standard Selectric 721 features, but none of those add-ons. And it has not been serviced fully, the 10-pitch chassis. And it has a couple little minor issues. The backspace is sometimes erratic, and when the cartridge gets to the end of the right spool, it doesn't always auto-reverse. I'm swapping a perfectly serviced, upgraded chassis for an original chassis in 10-pitch that has not been serviced, so that could be a problem in terms of whether I really like this idea. We'll have to see. That's what I've done in the last few days. I have swapped the chassis, so I want to talk about how I did that. There's a few things you have to look out for when you do that. And let's talk about the net effect. Do I really like it or not? Well, okay, the first thing I want to do is unplug the power cord so we're safe, and then we're going to take the top shell off. So to the right and left of the carriage area, you're going to have a lever like this. You want to pull it forward all the way, and also on the left side. So now we're going to remove the platen. You want to flip the paper bale forward, and on both sides there'll be a metal little lever like this. You're going to push the lever down and with the thumbs and pull the platen loose just like that. And then also in the front, you want to flip up the levers for your margins and the little indicator, the print position indicator. And also, if your print cartridge is too close to the margin setting, you need to move your margins out of the way of that. So you can flip those two things back. So these are all clear. And now you'll be able to lift the top shell off the machine. Okay, next we want to unlock the chassis from the base of the shell. And on the left side of the chassis, underneath the bell, is a lever right here. You want to push it toward the front of the keyboard. You may have to use a little tool to reach it. So that flips all the way over to the front, and that will free up the chassis to come loose.
Before you take the chassis out of the shell, you want to lift off this power cable support bracket off from the base. And then you want to carefully lift the chassis out of the base. Depending on the age of the chassis, there could be a nice big bracket in the back enabling you to lift it up a little easier. This one doesn't have it, so I'm going to have to lift up on the front, but be careful. Don't put your fingers underneath the front one too much because it could affect the linkages. When you do pull the chassis out of the base, you lift up the front of the chassis, and this bracket right on the rear right-hand part, you have to pull it forward from this rubber mounting block so that it'll clear the top edge of the block in order to get the back of the chassis to come up. So, word of caution, this is the space bar up here, or the front edge of the chassis. If you reach around to grab the chassis, don't put your finger pressure on these little spring contacts. There is a spring contact for each one of the key linkages, and these little springs will pop loose real easily from the key lever. In fact, I have one right here that needs to be adjusted. I might have to get the spring. There we go. So just by putting any kind of finger pressure on that, you could have problems with that, and that'll affect the keys. So be careful of that when you're picking up the machine. So with both chassis removed from the machine, it seems pretty straightforward to swap the chassis now. There is one word of caution though. When I did the swap initially, the front edge of the power switch and of the space bar was rubbing along the front edge of these openings because the mechanical chassis wasn't perfectly centered in the opening of the cutouts for the upper shell of the body. So there is a centering adjustment I want to show you to center the chassis once you get it put in. So on the underneath side of the body shell, there's two rubber bumpers. They support these two pins, one here and one here. And those engage a set of holes on the underneath side of the chassis. Okay, these are the two holes that those centering posts engage into. And you notice the one on the left here, the lever that unlocks the chassis from the bottom of the shell is operated onto that pin right here. And there are two screws on each of these brackets, one here, one here, one here, one here. So the idea is you want to loosen these four screws slightly from the top once the chassis is seated down in the body shell, the bottom half of the body shell, and then you can move this chassis forward and backwards slightly to center the keyboard in the opening of the top shell. And once you do that, you want to lock down these four screws again. And you'll need to use a long, skinny, slotted screwdriver. So in the process of tipping the chassis backwards, your feed rollers might have fallen out, like mine did, and there are two sets of them. The skinnier rollers go on the front half, and the little needle-like pins on the end of the roller shafts just sit in these little brackets. So the fatter rollers toward the rear, skinny toward the front. And then there will be the paper pan, which just sits down in here onto this bracket and that bracket. Something like that. So the trick is going to be this rear right bracket being centered underneath the top lip of this rubber bumper. And also the fact that there's nothing really good to hold on to on this chassis. So let's see if we can do this. Feed that in there, something like that. And then around here in the back, you want to put that power cord bracket back into the slots like that. And then to get to those screws to center the chassis onto the base, you have to kind of put a long, skinny screwdriver down between these linkages here and here on the right side and on the left side as well. Loosen those about a quarter turn, and then you'll be able to slide the chassis back and forward to get it centered on the top half of the body shell. And then lock those screws down once you're done. And then on the left side, you want to slide this lever all the way to the back, and that will lock the chassis into the bottom of the machine. You may have to use a tool or a screwdriver. Probably shouldn't be using an eraser like I am trying to do. Click, that clicks into place, and that locks the chassis down to the base. And there you can see the lever is all the way to the back, like it should be. The chassis is locked down. Okay, next we want to put the top shell on. I make sure that the paper release is pulled forward, paper bail down like that, so that all the levers go through their openings like that. Seat it down properly. So then pull the margin levers forward and the carrier indicator forward. And then we're going to lock in the top shell with the two levers on the sides. You push them toward the rear till they click into place. This one, click. Okay, now to put the platen in. This black lever goes on the right side. It is for the line spacing ratchet disconnect. You basically center this on these brackets, clicks into place. There we go. Good to go. Ready to go. Except for one problem. If you swapped a 12-pitch chassis for a 10-pitch chassis, your paper scale will not be accurate. So I had to take a thin razor knife and make a series of gentle passes right along the top edge of this thin, delicate aluminum strip and work the glue loose. And also I had to do the same thing on the underneath side and the back on both body shells. Finally remove them, and I had to spend an hour or so scraping the brown glue residue from off the backside of this aluminum strip. And finally it got clean enough to where I could reattach it. And the original was something like probably rubber cement, which I didn't have, so I used some double-sided Scotch tape in several places to hold this in place. If it comes loose in the future, I'll get some rubber cement and glue it in place. Well, the original 721 12-pitch machine with the blue shell had dark gray, almost black keys and black platen knobs. But now I have Gandalf the Gray's gray keyboard and gray platen knobs, and actually I really like the way it looks with the blue shell. I think it's very handsome. Well, over my shoulder is Gandalf the Gray, who now has a new chassis, a 12-pitch chassis, fully serviced and upgraded. The real question, though, is there a character from Lord of the Rings that works better with a blue-colored typewriter? Is there somebody that was blue in those books? Well, this has been an interesting project. The only real intricacy was that very fragile, thin aluminum scale on the front edge of the ribbon cover needs to be taken off with a razor knife very slowly and carefully. Otherwise, you will bend it and warp it. Now that I have it transferred to a 10 character per inch blue 721, I really like it. I like the imprint better. I'm happier with it. Going forward, I really look forward to keep using this. And I think the only issue that will stop me from continuing to use it would be if the mechanical issue with the ribbon reversing and with the backspace, if those start to be troublesome or start to bug me, I can try learning to dabble with it myself, and if I can't fix it, I'll get Steve to work on it. But in any event, behind me over here is Gandalf the Gray, who has an updated 12-pitch chassis that has been fully serviced and upgraded, so I do have the backup machine if I need it, if I do send this one off to get serviced. But I've really come to like these Selectric 721s. I didn't really care much for the larger, boxier Selectric IIs and IIIs, even though they have liftoff correction and dual pitch. I really like these smaller, curvier, shapelier, older Selectrics. But how about you? Do you care? If you have an original Selectric, do you prefer 10 or 12 pitch? Do you think I'm crazy for swapping the chassis? Does it really make that big of a difference to you, especially using cloth ribbon cartridges? I'd like to hear your story down below. Drop a note. Let's talk about it. I wish the very best for your creative ventures, and as always, stay creative and have yourselves a great day, and bye-bye for now.